Hey guys, what is up and welcome to a new Nvidia daily update video. So today, as per usual, let's go over Nvidia hitting absolutely new all-time highs today. So congratulations to anyone holding the stock. That is absolutely phenomenal. But yeah, let's jump into it. If you enjoyed, don't forget to hit that like button. This is not financial advice. I am not a financial advisor. And of course, if you enjoy my technical analysis, thoughts in the charts, updates, etc., I do share my thoughts, posts, updates, etc. as the market is open and trading with my YouTube members in my YouTube membership. Down below, if you're interested, that link is of course down below. Check out. For just $3 a month, gives you access to the first tier, which is the Tesla tier. $5 a month gives you access to Tesla plus Nvidia, or $7 a month US gives you access to non-Tesla, non-Nvidia stocks as well. When I see opportunities worth sharing, and I do membership or member chart requests on Discord every single weekend. So definitely check it out. And I look at charts members want to see me look at. Link is below. Anyways, jumping into it, Nvidia, absolutely phenomenal day. Finally getting that explosive move, right? We mentioned how, we should be getting a large move pretty soon after this pretty substantial and honestly snooze fest of a consolidation that we had for surprising amount of time. I'll be honest, I was shocked that this even lasted as long as it did. This was quite a snooze fest of a situation, but despite some warning signals being shown, right? For instance, like the MACD flipping bearish, right? We lost that trend line, which again, losing a trend line doesn't mean it crashes. It just means you're probably not going up as much. And, we definitely took another week and a half after losing that trend line. We never actually lost the momentum, the true momentum. I wouldn't say true momentum, right? The MACD technically or arguably is one of them, but we never lost the other two, right? Like I said, there's the MACD, the EMAs, stochastic. Those are my main three in terms of just momentum for the most part, right? We didn't lose all three of them. We lost just one of them, right? For instance, we never lost even the 8 exponential moving average. I've been talking about the 8 EMA for quite some time. We never had a convincing close below. We got pretty close a few times down here, but we never really got a true convincing close down below it, right? It just held it pretty well with stochastic just pretty much chilling well into the green area the entire time, which is, good signs, right? Or at least signs that showed that the bulls are still holding. And now, obviously, two or all three of them started to show red flags. That's a different story. We didn't get that. Instead, Nvidia finally had that nice gap up, and like I said, as long as it doesn't give back the gains the next day, kind of like what it did on these two candles right here, bulls should now absolutely be in control. So if we get any retest, which we didn't, but if we got any retest back to 145 roughly, that would be just a bullish retest into most likely a continuation higher. Instead, we just got a continued gap up, which is what I mentioned to my members this morning, how we got a gap up above my main target that I had at about 148, 149 roughly, which was this pivot point up here. And this is what I mentioned to my members this morning. I don't know if I can scroll down and try to find it. I'm sure you believe me. What's going on? Somewhere in the morning update, which was somewhere, I'm sure you believe me. Right here, I think it is. It's right here. Yeah, here. Showing nice strength this morning, getting a gap up above my 148 level. That's a good sign. If bulls can now hold 148 as support and we continue the momentum higher to my next major target of 152-ish to retest all-time highs and to also fill the final fair value gap. However, if we lose 148, then a potential retest of 145, which would be bullish, or at least should be bullish, would be in play. We didn't obviously lose 148. We held 148, 149 pretty much the entire day, right? And just went right up pretty much straight away, which is a good sign. And we reached my other target, which was this pivot point up here at a pretty much close to 153, including the fair value gap. But not only did we get there, obviously, but we actually closed above it. Interesting enough, Nvidia has been showing some very nice pressure, a little bit up after hours off of Micron earnings. Micron, if you're not aware, did report earnings. They are up a nice respectable 3.5%. So the chips are getting a bit of a lift on that as well. But the way I look at Nvidia now is because, all things being considered, it didn't get my retracement that I wanted to see back to the mid 130s. So, it is what it is. Sometimes you get them, sometimes you don't, right? That's just how the things work. But the way I look at it now is the fact that, first of all, I start viewing this kind of 148, 149 now. That's pretty much major support now, right? Plain and simple stuff, right? If I bring out this kind of right here and kind of extend it further, you can see, major resistance here, definitely some level of resistance here, right? Now, naturally, this is, in my opinion, the first time Nvidia has finally broken above this 148, 149 level and actually very convincingly closed above it, right? I think there's absolutely no arguing the fact that this was a very convincing close above that range. Before, you can see it tried it a few times, but it was never really a convincing close above it, right? It was just around it or below it or just a fake move to the upside, kind of like on this candle here, right? Went above it, closed well below it, of course, things like that. This is the first time, which is good. Very, very bullish. So in other words, again, to me, 148, 149 is an extremely large area of support now. That's going to be the major one to watch. Below that, things can get back to being a little bit bearish potentially. But above that, I think bulls have full control. Now, we also have this potential small support, if you will, coming up pretty much right here at pretty much previous all-time highs, right? 153, we'll say roughly, right? That is going to be near-term support for Nvidia. So as long as the bulls, and if I go to the 4-hour chart, you can see it's already kind of started turning it into a support on the 4-hour chart. You can see the second half of the day came right into it. Nice little wick at the bottom over there, right? So bulls are clearly already turning it into a support, which is a good sign. But I do want to point out certain aspects of Nvidia here, right? I personally, the reason, okay, so it is a support, but it's not as strong of a support, at least as of right now, mainly because there's not that much technical evidence from the past suggesting that this is a strong support. Yeah, we have two nice little touch points here, but compare that to how many touch points we have here, even here, arguably here, right? This is why to me, 148-ish is a much stronger support. And honestly, it wouldn't fully shock me if at some point Nvidia does come back to it and retest that. And from there, of course, we'll see. But as long as the bulls hold, I think, I would expect them to continue higher, of course, naturally. But that is something to watch for, right? So, even though 153-ish should be support, it's hard to say how effective of a support it will be, just mainly because, there's less past evidence of such a thing. So just FYI. But regardless, I do view 148, 149 roughly as a very strong support. Now, one thing that I sometimes look at when it comes to, looking for a stock that's potentially a little bit on the more overbought side, right? So if I hold shares in a stock, if I see a stock reaching a certain threshold, which Nvidia is extremely close to, that's where I either trim or start selling calls. And that's going to be the bottom indicator here, the SMI, right? The 4-hour to me is one of the, I purposely fine-tuned it for the 4-hour time frame, where as I increase it here, it's pointing straight up still. What I like to look at is whenever it gets to these elevated territories above essentially 60, because it's still pointing up, I still wouldn't do it. So that to me tells me there's still potential more upside for Nvidia. But once this thing starts flatlining, and especially once it starts crossing bearish, that's where I start either again trimming and or selling calls against my shares. The only reason I'm pointing this out is because Nvidia is getting close to getting to that stage, right? That's arguably the next stage is going into. Now, like I said, they're still both pointing straight up, which implies that there still could be some extra upside remaining, naturally speaking. But to show you an example of what that can potentially look like, this is on Shopify. Same idea. I actually did sell calls against my shares on Shopify today. I bought them right down here. And now I'm selling my calls right up here. Pretty nice, actually. But, you can see how it's now kind of curving, right? It's no longer pointing as straight up as at least Nvidia is right now, just to show you an example of what I'm roughly looking for. And especially if the bearish crossover happens, kind of like over here, you can see, right? So that's kind of what I'll be looking for in Nvidia, right? That could be an early sign of momentum, most likely starting to fade, most likely starting to potentially even reverse back down to like that 148 region, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But that's kind of the way I look at it. And the reason I like to sell calls against it is because I could be, even if I'm wrong and it still goes a little bit higher, because my calls are, usually around a 0.3 delta, I still have extra wiggle room. Or let's say it doesn't retrace. Let's say it does something like this, where it doesn't really retrace. It just kind of just goes sideways. It doesn't really do anything, right? Which could be a possibility. Of course, it could just maybe go sideways here for another extended period of time. Then in that case, you're also winning. You win pretty much in either direction while maintaining your shares, which is a nice little W in my opinion. But nonetheless, that's something that we'll continue tracking. I wouldn't be surprised if by Friday it starts getting a bit of that extra signal that I just showed you on Shopify. But that's something I'll be watching for moving forward on Nvidia. But nonetheless, the stock on the daily time frame is still very, very bullish. We're still in a very obvious ascending channel. I do expect at some point, maybe we come up to the bottom end, or the top end, I should say, of this rising channel, which actually would be a move closer to 160. That is actually a possibility still. We could maybe even see 160. From there, we can potentially start looking to top out. And then maybe that's where the SMI gets that, 4-hour crossover like I just showed. And then maybe we start making our way closer to, the 148 region, maybe zigzag slowly like this. And then maybe eventually come down to the 148 while also coming down to the bottom end of this rising channel here. And then go higher. That is always a possibility. But this would be very, very boring. So we'll see if that actually plays out. But nonetheless, that's kind of what I'm looking for in Nvidia right now moving forward. The weekly still looks pretty damn solid. Again, not getting that retracement I personally expected or thought we would get. But again, that's just how it goes sometimes, right? Not always going to be right about everything. But hey, that's why I also don't short when a stock is in a very obvious uptrend, exactly for this reason. Despite me, thinking that, I wouldn't be surprised to see, 135, 130, for instance, right? it doesn't mean I'm buying puts, right? It doesn't mean I'm buying puts because the stock is still in an uptrend. Absolutely, there's no question about it. I'm not going against the trend, so I don't lose anything. I just don't gain the profits. That's all it is. I think that's pretty much it, right? I don't know, not much more to say, not much more to mention. I think that's the majority of it. But yeah, in terms of options flow, last thing I'm gonna take a look at very quickly here. See what's happening. Yeah, very bullish flow. I mean, Nvidia had very bullish flow, especially in the morning, like 21 million. This is the flow I used to see on Nvidia when Nvidia used to be like the main attention. Maybe now that Tesla's tanking, Nvidia is getting all the attention again. So that is actually a possibility. But very nice bullish flow throughout almost the entire day. Some bearish flow here and there, of course, like this one right here. You can see for 140K. But yeah, the bullish flow definitely outweighs the bearish flow today. It's not even close, man. Very, very bullish flow throughout the day. So yeah, the stock unquestionably is still in a very bullish uptrend. Let's see how that continues. But yeah, thanks for watching. See you tomorrow. Peace.